How do I even start this episode? I guess we'll go from the top. Back in January of 2025, I began a journey. A journey to discuss 20 Sonic games in individual videos, which would all lead to a final ranking briefly talking about them all. Unlike many video series I've began before, I was confident that I would be able to finish this one, despite its even more ambitious nature. Maybe it was naivety or sheer passion shining through, but there is one definitive reason I can muster: my history. I've started and stopped so many video projects in the past, and I've felt that every time it happens. My passion just stops and I move on awkwardly. This time, however, would be different. I created a subconscious deadline to get it done, and forced myself to sit down and fulfill a promise for once. And whilst I may not have reached said deadline, it's been over half a year at this point, my drive to finish a series never stopped. Despite all the interesting video ideas that sprung up over the past year and a third, I knew I needed to see this through. And that brings us to today. 19 videos on 20 Sonic games later, because I combined Sonics 1 and 2 together, we've reached the finale. A video putting everything together, understanding why Sonic is so exceptional. I started this in the first place because I felt like my takes on these games were interesting enough, and here is where I can talk about them. I obviously won't go to the same lengths as I do in each video, so check them out if you want to see deeper thoughts on them all. I will also focus a bit more on the videos themselves alongside anything I may have missed in them, but this ranking is my current thoughts on the games themselves. With this intro said and done, let's talk about every single game I consider to be mainline in the Sonic franchise. Oh, and let's look a lot cooler whilst doing that. Don't worry dude, you don't need to redo pixel sprites. 20. Yeah, my sentiment on Sonic Forces has not changed since January last year. I still think it is a frustrating, painfully boring mess that forsakes the name of the boost formula by showcasing what the worst of it could possibly be. I also think the video itself still holds up fairly well. I articulated my points decently, I found a lot of details myself, and there were some funny moments throughout. I do wish I talked about the music a bit more though. I played a little bit towards the beginning, but this was before I stole what Bikuri Box does. Yeah, I was inspired by a ton of different Sonic tubers throughout this series, and I'll mention them as we go along. Unfortunately, due to how much passion and rage I showcase in said video, there's not really much else I can yap about here. Everything is perfectly articulated there, and I'm super happy I chose it as the beginning of this insane project of mine. It set the precedent for what each episode would be like, and I think I lived up to it with pretty much every one of these. So yeah, nothing's really changed here, just a greater feeling of disinterest. 19. And this is the first major change of the list. I ultimately realised long after creating the original ranking that the gameplay drags Secret Rings down far too much to be okay. I looked at this game and Lost World and asked myself which one I would rather play first, and had to go with the more realistic option. If Forces had more apparent heart behind itself, I would probably place it higher than this one to be perfectly honest. At least everything in the video still holds up pretty well. The music's banging, the story's still compelling, I really like the characters. It's pretty well documented in the shortest episode of this series. Only by 3 seconds, but still. This game simply has so much more sauce than Forces, making me like it a lot more, despite finding it more frustrating at the end of the day. I never ended up talking about the multiplayer side of things. That exists, by the way, but who cares? I doubt anyone will be super upset about that, considering I've never seen anyone mention it ever. But yeah, that's kind of it. Despite hating the gameplay, I still can't bring myself to hate the game as a whole. 18. As I basically just said, Secret Rings was frustrating enough for me to place it lower than this game, but I attribute this change more towards finding more to enjoy in Lost World. Those rail grinding levels seriously cook that hard for me. I love speedrunning them, and there are some other levels sprinkled about that I also somewhat enjoy. Now that I think about it, these games are sort of two sides of the same coin. Secret Rings has a great story and kind of ass gameplay, whilst Lost World has a terrible story and some relatively okay gameplay all around. At least both have good soundtracks together. I just think the positives of one outweigh the other. The video I'd still say is well dated, I'd just make it less negative all around probably. Again though, there's nothing I feel like I need to add to the conversation. It's just an okay game with a pretty good video, that I don't really see myself coming back to in at least a very long time. 17. I think out of all games covered within this series, Sonic 1 is the one I can think of the least to say about. Like, yeah, it set the foundation of what Sonic would be like, and sorta holds up decently, but that's really it. There's absolutely nothing new to bring to the conversation about this game, because I've already talked about everything I needed to. Decent levels, bad levels, mid-bosses, solid bosses, good music, that's it. I guess because of that fact there's no reason to dwell, huh? It was a great idea of mine to combine this game and Sonic 2 together in my eyes due to all of these things, so let's just move on. 16. This one is a little weird because I'm both confident in this placement and not confident at all. Replaying Sonic Superstars is not really something I want to do, but I've got this sinking feeling that I probably should at some point to make sure that I get the placement locked down. I might like it more than Sonic 2's, spoilers for the next placement, whoops. But maybe not. I guess it entirely relies on those awful bosses, as I've heard more and more people say that time attacking the levels is good fun. Don't get me wrong, a lot of my original sentiments still ring true. The visuals could be more stylized, the music is pretty inconsistent, and a greater focus on the idea of character-exclusive levels would improve the sense of replayability. I just think that a replay myself may clarify the more fuzzy points of this game, because I just don't really remember it that well. Oh, yeah, and if you're wondering why the border around me on the thumbnail's colored the wrong way, it's because it was an accident, but I'm keeping it because it's funny. 15. This has always been one of the most controversial placements of the list, and it still rings true. I don't think Sonic 2 quite reaches the sheer consistency of level design that games like 3 and Knuckles and Mania reach. Everything good about it I can get in other locations. I like Green Hill more than Emerald Hill, Mania's adaptations of Chemical Plant and Oil Ocean are improvements, CD is far more unique and creative to me with a much better style, and 3 and Knuckles is just a better this game to me. Now, I do acknowledge that these zones are more consistent than in Sonic 1 and probably Superstars, so I do like them more, but still, I don't feel the drive to come back to this game quite like I do with really any other outside of the ones below it. Of course, I'm not saying that you have to agree with me, I'm well aware of how controversial these statements are, but that's why I made this series. You know what else is controversial? 14. Sonic 06 is a game I can't hate. There are some terrible aspects. The glitches can mess you up in ways you wouldn't be able to predict in a million years. The bosses are obscenely slow-paced and boring, some characters feel miserable to play as, and the story can be extremely convoluted in ways. I still love it though. No matter how broken or messy this game gets, I can still see the attempt at something compelling here. The level design saves the gameplay for me, some glitches can be insanely fun to mess around with, and there are many other story aspects I genuinely love, like Shadows and Silver's stories. Of course, the problems are why the game is this low, but I think I actually like it more than a few others higher in the list. The video is one of my best in my eyes, and Project 06 exists, so yeah. This game means a heck of a lot to me, despite it really only being at maximum a 6 out of 10. 13. I think Heroes is probably the game I've struggled to place on this list the most. Superstars may be the one I've forgotten about the most, but I just can't figure out whether to place it below 06 or above spot 11. This is what I've come up with, however, and I am decently satisfied with it. The gameplay of this game is all around solid, the music is pretty great, the bosses kinda suck ass outside of the final phase of the final one, and the story is pretty basic. There's a heck of a ton of charm to this entry, so I can't bring myself to hate it of course, but it is definitely one of the toughest to really get down. This is one where if you grew up with it, you click with it so much more than any other. I think the video on this one was one of the more forgettable ones too, and I don't think I had anything too out there to explain or cover, so yeah. Definitely a good game at its core, just not my favourite to go back to at all. 12. Man, I love Black Knight. It is the best 6.5 out of 10 game out there. The story truly elevates it to this status in all honesty. They cooked so unbelievably hard for no real reason there. The gameplay's fine, sure, but there's so much more to everything that isn't the gameplay here. I love the visuals, the improved animatic cutscenes, the brilliant music, all the extra mechanics that have no business being there, like the morality system. Why did the gameplay have to be so middling? This so easily can be a top-tier Sonic game if they just, completely changed how you play it. There is a certain charm to how it is right now, sure, but I don't think anyone would complain about a Project Reignition-styled fan game of this thing. I'm pretty certain that's already in the works, but you'll have to let me know more about it. I'm hella proud of the video, by the way. I think it did a great job analysing the symbolism of the flower and what it means for the greater story of the game. There's such a big discussion to be had about Black Knight, which is why I love it. It is also my 12th favourite Sonic game. 11. Yep, Sonic Colors is still pretty good. This was a very memorable video for me, as it was the first one I did directly after Forces. A lot of precedents were set by this one, like the showcase of banger music at the end and the way I went about describing levels, even if it was a little different. But yeah, this is probably one of the least thought about games since this video. Not because I don't care, but because it states absolutely everything I could have about the game without leaving anything out. This leaves us with nothing to talk about. So, wanna talk about guns? 10. And we have reached what is by far the biggest change of the list, Shadow the Hedgehog at number 10. I already stated within the video on this game that the placement of it is much higher these days, so I guess that was a kind of foreshadowing to this episode if you didn't know it was happening. Ah well, this game is still pretty darn sweet to me. Good controls, fight me, mixed but ultimately good levels, expert mode is super fun, and the music is brilliant. This is sort of a best case scenario for 06 in a way. Not buggy, a similarly convoluted and all over the place narrative, and the mechanics themselves being definitely similar due to health bars for instance. You get what I mean? There's a lot of similar aspects to each game, but one was made for more powerful hardware the developers weren't super used to using yet. Plus, the rushed deadlines obviously led to the game not being nearly as polished as Shadow 05. Oh yeah, whilst I do like the video overall, I did kinda sorta never talk about the final boss. I was gonna save it for the usual finale talk I tend to do, like in the Unleashed video for example, but I decided not to do it here because I didn't really have a lot to say about it. I decided this after I had already done the bit about boss fights, and I just couldn't be bothered to change it. In all fairness, I had a strict deadline to get this thing out because of the other stuff I needed to do in December, but still, I think the fight's just okay for your information. Sorry about that, but yeah, Shadow the Hedgehog is still a surprisingly goated game to me, even without the fan-made quality of life stuff like Reloaded. 9. Man, do I love Sonic CD. It was the first classic game I played when going through Origins that really clicked with me. This was even before I figured out how perfect the JP soundtrack is, too. It's only added to how much I love this thing. Of course, the game does get weaker as you go along. Wacky Workbench is kind of a stinker, sadly, but I really love the majority of zones here. The style and atmosphere of this game is what really draws me to it, however. I strive to make stuff that looks as cool as this. I've been inspired by this atmosphere for a university project, it's that good to me. This is sorta similar to Black Knight, but to a lesser extent now that I think about it. I really like the gameplay, I adore the style to death and the music, but there's a few aspects here and there that unfortunately makes me place it this low. Ah well, I still love it to death anyway. 8. After the 06 video was when my motivation for this series really took a hit. It didn't help that the next two games I would be talking about are some of the ones I cared the least for, Heroes and Superstars. This lack of motivation bled into the video on the number 8 spot, Sonic Adventure 2. If there's a video I'd go back and redo, it's this one. I just feel like there's something clear within it that shows I didn't care as much, but you tell me if you can see it. I think it's also pretty telling that after this video was the Crossworlds one, which I won't be covering here as it was a simple bonus to give myself a break, but still. Nevertheless, my opinions are at least still accurate. I like speed, mech is pretty okay, and I'm not a fan of treasure hunting. I like the story, I like the music, it's all there in that video, it just didn't have the sauce it needed in my eyes. 7. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is another one where I really can't add anything to the conversation. The game is simply amazing, I can totally see why one would consider it their favourite. Fantastic levels, barely any duds for bosses, great music despite its weird copyright stuff. There's really nothing major to critique these days. The video was also a really solid one, I couldn't have chosen a better game to finish the classics off in my eyes. I seriously can't think of anything else to add, so let's just move on, honestly. 6. The more I think about Sonic Adventure, the more awesome I consider it. Sonic's levels are so goddamn good, man. Have you played Red Mountain, or Skydeck, or Final Egg? There's also not a gameplay style I actively dislike playing, at least in the main story, of course. There's some surprisingly amazing story beats for a mid-90s Dreamcast game, the soundtrack's a personal favourite, man how could you hate this one? Oh yeah, I did. What a crazy ton of events, huh? Mentioning how I didn't like it back in 2023, then realizing how great it is with a simple change in perspective. It just goes to show that maybe something like that is all you need to enjoy something. Obviously it won't work for everything, but it's worth a shot, right? The video was absolutely fire too, definitely a personal favourite of mine. I can definitely see myself replaying this game real soon. Heck, writing this is giving me that urge. We've still got the top 5 to get through though, so let's press on. 5. Sonic Mania is sort of the crux for the whole takeaway I want you to have about this series. Well, this game and Frontiers at least. I obviously had that big section in the video talking about how passion affects the player's perspective, and that is exactly what this whole series has really been about. I've showcased every little bit of passion I could within each entry, even within Forces, and it demonstrates why I love this series so goddamn much. We'll come back to this in the outro, but yeah, Sonic Mania is just a masterpiece. Over half a year since the release of the original video, and I still can't think of anything major to critique. It's that well-rounded. Having this as your number 1 might honestly be the most reasonable of all Sonic games ever, alongside 3 and Knuckles, because there's nothing that gets in the way of the fun. I can't get enough of this game and gushing all over it, but I've already done that extensively before, so I'll leave this discussion here. 4. Similar to Sonic Adventure, I sorta had a pretty big turnaround on Generations since I played the Shadow Gens version. I thought it was good back then, but not as special as the other peak boost entries, and you can see that in my first Sonic-focused vid. Obviously, the turnaround is not nearly as major, but it's still very apparent. I'm thinking of replaying some of the stages whilst writing this, they are so unbelievably well designed. As always, I said most of what I needed to say in the video, but I honestly don't really remember much of the development process of it. Surrounding the video on number 4 is the last classic Sonic vid, the last video altogether before the last big 2, and my biggest deep dive into a narrative yet. These much more important releases are probably what clouds my view on this one so much, but not on the game itself of course. If only there were another thing that released which took this idea of returning classic stages and amplified the mechanics and improved the story. 3. So this is probably the most significant change in placement outside of probably Shadow 05. I realized very recently that Shadow Generations' lower amount of content in comparison to the top 2 makes me unable to put it there in good consciousness. This one plays the same for its whole runtime, whereas both higher entries have some kind of differing, more combat-focused gameplay style. I'm not saying this game needed it of course, it was already paired with Sonic Generations, but still. The smaller scope naturally leads its placement into number 3 in my opinion. Of course, it is still number 3, so that obviously means it is as peak as I said about a month ago. It just brings me with so much hope to the future of this series, which is really all I need. We still don't have any idea of what the next game may be as of the time I'm writing this, outside of Infinite probably being a part of it, what a world, but I am so confident that they will cook. It may not be a perfect game, because nothing is, let's be real, but I know that I'm gonna love it. 2. Considering the fact that Sonic Unleashed is still a game I think about constantly to this very day, even after I made a complete hour-long discussion of the whole thing, it's no wonder why it's made it to second place. This game truly has everything that could appeal to me in this kind of Sonic game. Addictingly tough levels, a super fun alternate gameplay style, wonderful orchestral music, a touching story, beautiful cutscenes, and so much more. More than any other entry in this series that isn't number 1, this game gets me. Heck, I did a stream playing the DLC levels for the first time, what other Sonic game could I do that with? I'm not doing 06. There is simply some spark to this game that I can't see with any other. A certain passion blooming from the developers that I can only glean from this one game. Well, this game, and the number 1 spot. Considering how unbelievably long the video on it is, It's no wonder it stayed at the top, so let's just get to talking about it. 1. This'll be tough to write about because I made it my goal to say everything I could within the video. Obviously, I'm so unbelievably happy with how it turned out, despite it being on the lower end of the series in terms of views. I even made some shorts to promote it, but it wasn't enough. Oh well, it seems to have touched the people who saw it, so I'm glad. This video marks something to me. It represents my perseverance more than any other. I was quite frankly terrified of even attempting to edit together a 28-page script, but I knew I needed to do this. This was something I needed to prove to myself, and I did it. After taking a new approach to editing, splitting it up into 3 separate segments all divided into their own individual segments, and starting up in the new year, it was all there for me to get it as perfect as I wanted it to be. I'm so goddamn happy with this video, and everything I stated in it still rings true. The gameplay has so much flow to it and is some of the tightest. The combat has a similar flow and is really fun in and of itself. I love the showcase of the understanding of characters from the story, and there is generally an air of care that I don't see within any other game. From the Titan fights, to the Knuckles prologue short, to the free content updates post-launch, I wholeheartedly believe in the passion baked into every second of this game. This is not a tale of losing the ability to tell your story. This game is a tale of learning from limitations and doing everything you can to make the most of them. I'm not saying it's the best Sonic game, heck, even I don't fully believe that. But it is by far the game that resonated with me the most from back when I first played it to now. And that ends the Sonic series. It should come at no surprise when I say that Sonic the Hedgehog is one of my favourite gaming franchises. It's not just because of how good the best games in it are, but also because of its inconsistency. Sonic Team has never been okay with settling with one idea for too long, for better or for worse, and it's led to one of the most fascinating franchises in gaming to talk about. There are so many different types of Sonic game, and no one can come to an agreement as to which style is the best. And that's what's so cool. No one will agree, so we all have a different take. There's someone out there who adores Forces as much as I love Frontiers, and hates Frontiers as much as I despise Forces, and I am all there to see what they say. There is a certain passion that can be drawn from most Sonic games that other franchises can't seem to replicate. Mario stays consistently amazing, sure, but that leaves the discussion far less interesting, at least to me. Am I saying that Sonic is better than Mario? Not necessarily, but each franchise has their own strengths and weaknesses that must be acknowledged. I guess what you should take away from this video and this series is that no matter how badly you can fail at something, no matter how unfortunate the circumstances of something may be, as long as you try your damnedest, there will be something to take away from it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. I'll probably be doing a stream real soon so you can ask me questions, and I'll be making some posts and potentially smaller videos talking about other stuff too. Goodbye.